Epworth Seminary opened its doors to students in the fall of 1904. For the first 20 years of operation, the only athletic outlets available to students at the school were of the playground variety. That changed in 1923 when school administrators decided to sponsor the game of competitive basketball for both male and female students. Basketball would continue to be the only sanctioned sport at Epworth Seminary and later Epworth High School until the county-wide consolidation program in 1955. The seminary did not have a gymnasium for basketball competition, so until 1935, home games were played in the auditorium located in the upper floor of the administration building. When weather permitted, practices and probably some actual games were played on an outdoor court. The Fannin County Times newspaper provides a hint of the primitive playing conditions in the early days of the seminary with this quote from a November 1924 edition. Although the basketball became too badly worn to be used, the boys would not be handicapped by such a thing. Without any delay, they purchased another ball this week, and basketball games are being played as usual. The most modern indoor facilities at the time were the YMCA buildings at Ducktown and Copper Hill, and another news report from 1924 states that through the kindness of the manager of the YMCA of Copper Hill, the Epworth basketball team has done quite a bit of practicing on the Y court. The 1926-27 seminary teams are the first teams for which we have much information. Some of the members of the boys team that season were Harold Cochran, Captain Hubert Nichols, Claude Nichols, and young Query. Mr. Query went on to earn a degree in chemical engineering from Georgia Tech and returned to live, raise a family, and become a community leader in Epworth for the remainder of his life. Some of the members of the girls' team were Willa and Tilla Kimsey, Hazel Nichols, Pearl Millsaps, Callie Mae Patterson, and Captain Laura Cook. Miss Cook went on to play basketball at Tennessee Wesleyan, where she was named the best athlete among the girl students at that school in 1929. She returned to Fannin County to teach after graduation from college. The 1931-32 seminary girls lost their first 3 games and then ran off 12 consecutive victories before losing in the District 9 tournament. The leaders of that team were seniors Mary Kate Angel and Ruby Goss. Other starters were junior Ruth Patton and sophomores Inez Callahan and Ezra Lee Stone. At that time, a free throw shooting competition was held at the district tournament, and Mary Kate was awarded a gold basketball for her shooting accuracy at the 1931 tournament. She would live her entire life in Fannin County, working for many years at the Smelter Store, the retail outlet of the Tennessee Copper Company. Inez Callahan and Ezra Lee Stone were joined on the 1933-34 team by the Collins sisters, Myrtle and Helen, Mary Cowart, and Ruby Patterson. Helen Collins was named to the 9th District All-Tournament team in 1934. The 1931-32 seminary boys team players were Paul Kimsey, J.D. Galloway, Jack Harper, C.G. Loudermilk, Carl Howard, Roy Query, Garney Craig, and Glenn Cowart. The coach of this team was Leroy Weiss. Paul Kimsey would join the Civilian Conservation Corps shortly after completing his studies and was assigned to the CCC Camp 485 near Athens, Georgia. Paul was trained to be a cook at the camp and played for the camp basketball and baseball teams. He was joined on the baseball team by fellow Fannin County native Shag Hunt. The Athens CCC team competed in the Georgia Piedmont League. During his stay with the CCC, Paul met a young lady named Ann Brown from nearby Washington, Georgia, and the two were married in 1937. The young couple moved to Epworth, where they raised a family and were community and church leaders for the remainder of their lives. Another member of the 1931-32 seminary boys team was 8th grader Jack Harper. Jack later transferred to Copper Hill High, where he was a starter for the 1934-35 Copper Hill 11th District champions. Jack went on to become a pilot and career Air Force officer. He and his wife, Pat Cross of Houston, Texas, would make national headlines in 1953. They were married aboard a DC-6 airplane in the air above the San Jacinto Monument in Texas. It was reported to be the first aerial wedding in history. It was announced in the summer of 1935 that the Epworth Seminary Board of Trustees' application for federal funding of a new gymnasium through a Roosevelt New Deal agency had been approved. The arrangement provided that the federal government would provide 1/3 of the materials and all of the labor required to erect a 65 by 100-foot modern wooden gymnasium for the school. Support from the community would be needed to raise $1,500 for the remainder of the materials. The local funding was raised and construction of the new gym began in September of 1935. The original agency that approved the project, FERA, Federal Emergency Relief Administration, had been shut down, but its projects were assumed by another agency, the WPA, Works Progress Administration. The workers for the construction were provided by the WPA as well as the CCC, under the supervision of local carpenter Bass Herron, who received checks for his services from the United States government. In the summer of 1936, the Epworth Seminary became Epworth High School when the operation and maintenance of the facility was converted from a private church school to a public school under the supervision and direction of the Fannin County School Board. The first Fannin County High School basketball tournament was held in late January 1939. The high schools from Epworth, Blue Ridge, and Morganton, as well as a group of older boys from McKaysville Elementary School, were entered. McKaysville High School did not open until the fall of 1940, but did offer a few high school level courses prior to that time. The Epworth girls won the tournament in both 1939 and 1940, while the boys captured the 1940 title. The girls won the 1939 crown by defeating Morganton and Blue Ridge on successive nights. The girls were led in scoring by Arvilla Bridges, who scored 12 and 16 points in the two victories. Other members of these girls' teams included Ethel Harper, Catherine Reardon, Doris Watson, Ethel and Ellen Cowart, and Sybil Loudermilk. The 1940 boys were led by Royce Fortner, who was also the valedictorian of the 1940 graduating class. Both teams were coached by Lewis Chambers, who came to the school as its first principal and coach in the fall of 1936. Chambers had enjoyed a stellar basketball career at Piedmont College in the early 1930s. Royce Fortner is pictured here with teammate Gurley Johnson. Gurley Johnson was one of 11 children of Vic and Jessie Johnson. Vic and his family moved to Epworth from McKaysville in 1936. He was a community leader and church leader in the community for the remainder of his life. After Jessie's death, Vic married Irene Quintrell, who taught at Epworth Elementary School for many years. All of the 11 children of Vic and Jessie Johnson were given first names beginning with the letter G. The Johnson children were all accomplished musicians and athletes. Gentry Johnson played at Epworth High School, graduating with the class of 1942. Gentry went on to play college basketball at Lincoln Memorial University in Harrogate, Tennessee, located near the Cumberland Gap at the confluence of the borders of the states of Tennessee, Kentucky, and Virginia. After completing college, Gentry returned to Epworth for a time and was a teacher and coach of the 1949-1950 Epworth boys and girls teams. Another Epworth basketball player, Elvin Williams, would follow Gentry to LMU following his graduation from Epworth in 1944. Elvin was a member of the 1944-45 LMU basketball team. The Fannin County Tournament was held each year from 1938-39 through the 1954-55 school year, at which time Epworth High School was consolidated into the new West Fannin High School, with the exception of a 3-year hiatus due to travel restrictions during World War II. Epworth High School teams would also participate in 2 other tournaments over the years. During the 1939-40 and 1940-41 seasons, Epworth participated in a tri-state county tournament that included teams from Georgia, Tennessee, and North Carolina. The same group of girls that won the 1940 Fannin County tournament would also capture the tri-state crown by defeating Hayesville, North Carolina High School in the championship game. The 1940 boys were narrowly defeated by Hayesville in the boys' championship game. In 1941-42, a bi-state tournament was held including Ducktown and Copper Hill High Schools in Tennessee, and Epworth, McKaysville, Morganton, Blue Ridge, Hiawassee, and Ellijay High Schools in Georgia. This tournament was held annually through the 1949-50 season. Undoubtedly, the high point of Epworth High School basketball history occurred in 1944-45. Although the Fannin County Tournament was not held during that wartime year, both the Epworth boys and girls captured the championship of the bi-state tournament. The boys' team members were Frank Buttram, Rufus Seymour, Herbert Mull, Cecil Spivey, George McDaniel, Delane Queen, Sam Parrish, and Gene Millsaps. These boys won the bi-state championship by defeating Ducktown, Blue Ridge, and McKaysville on successive nights in early March of 1945. They also won the District 9 Northern Division Championship by defeating Clayton High School. Their run of victories came to an end when they dropped a close decision to Brazelton, just missing a trip to the state tournament. The 1944-45 Epworth girls team won 26 of 27 regular season games, losing only to Baldwin High School. Baldwin was a Class B school, which meant that the school had a daily average attendance between 126 and 750 students, and Epworth was in the Class C category for schools with a daily average attendance of 125 or fewer students. The Epworth and Baldwin girls played 3 times during the 44-45 season, and Epworth won twice, with Baldwin earning only 1 narrow victory on their home court. The 2 losses to Epworth were the only regular season losses for Baldwin, who would play in the Class B state tournament in 1945. In addition to the bi-state tournament championship, the 1944-45 Epworth girls also won the District 9 Northern Division Championship and lost to Bethesda High School by 2 points in the overall district championship game. 1945 was the first year that the state of Georgia held a state tournament for girls, so the Epworth Lasses missed playing in that historic event by only 2 points. The members of this Epworth team were Evelyn Waters, Sue Loudermilk, Midge Fortner, Iris Owenby, Greta Johnson, Janice Jones, Irene Stover, Eula Harper, Bonnie Stover, and Bernadine Heaton. Bernadine Heaton was a Mineral Bluff resident and was a junior at Epworth in 1944-45. She was arguably the best basketball player in the county, boy or girl, and is a charter member of the Fannin County Sports Hall of Fame. Her coach at Epworth was a legendary Edgar Preacher Nichols. Some of the adjectives used to describe Preacher by those who remember him are charismatic and competitive. In a recruiting coup, Preacher arranged for Bernadine to be transported from her home in Mineral Bluff to Epworth to attend school and to apply her considerable basketball skills. During the week, she lived with the young Query family to help with the care of Mrs. Query, who was in poor health. Another legendary Fannin County coach, Clyde Henry, was working in a wartime job in Ohio during the 44-45 school year. He returned to his native county, however, in time to accept a position as teacher and coach of the Fannin County High School basketball teams in Morganton for the 45-46 season. When he discovered that the best player around lived in Mineral Bluff but played at Epworth, he put a stop to that arrangement and brought Bernadine back to the eastern side of the county to play at Morganton during the 45-46 season. The move paid dividends for the Morganton girls as they advanced to the Class B state championship game before tasting defeat. Even without the services of Bernadine Heaton, the Epworth girls of 1945-46 repeated as bi-state tournament champions. All tournament selections for the girls were Bonnie Stover, Evelyn Waters, Iris Owenby, and another of Vic and Jesse Johnson's G kids, Greta Johnson. The ensuing years saw the Epworth girls win 2 Fanning County championships and experience several near misses in big tournament games. The 1949-50 and the 1953-54 girls won Fanning County championships, while the 1948-49 and 49-50 girls suffered narrow losses in District 9 tournaments to arch-rival Jasper High School. The 1949-50 girls were led by Tommy Sue Fisher, a left-handed forward who was one of the all-time greats at Epworth. She was named to several all-tournament teams, including the 1949 and 1950 Fanning County tournaments and the 1950 bi-state tournament. Her teammates on the 49-50 team, coached by Gentry Johnson, were Sue Abernathy, Jean Paris, Mary Ruth Nichols, Betty Ruth Hopkins, Jacqueline Paris, Ruth Korn, Louise Green, Mary Tankersley, Claudia Thrasher, Lena Rose Abernathy, Margie Mae Hopkins, Ellen Ruth Smith, and Peggy Jean Taylor. Sue Abernathy, a junior in 49-50, would go on to be named the captain of the next year's team. After graduation, Sue played basketball in college at Truett McConnell. The 1953-54 girls team included players from both Epworth and McKaysville. The McKaysville school burned in the spring of 1953, and most of the students attended school at Epworth for the next 2 years. The 1953-54 girls team was led by Kay Hood, Marlene Thurman, Nancy Query, Frances Taylor, Irene Tipton, Mary Ann Cook, Peggy Simons, Virginia Mull, Willa Mae Thomas, Polly Garrison, Christine Rutherford, Barbara Seagraves, and Nancy Brown. On the boys' side of the ledger, the 1950-51 Epworth lads distinguished themselves by winning the Fanning County Tournament Championship. Named to the all-tournament team were Mark Kimsey, Joe Ballou, and William Young Query. They lost in the District 9 tournament to Dawsonville by only 1 point. Other members of this team were Charles Hensley, Doyce Loudermilk, Wayne Loudermilk, Rayford Weiss, Joe Watson, L.C. Stover, Joe Bill Vestal, Hoyt Patterson, Don White, Ray Hensley, Garland Nicholson, Harold Ross, Bill Stover, Jack Davidson, and Ralph Seabolt. William Young Query was the overall leading scorer, averaging a shade above 10 points per game. Beginning with the 1948 graduating class, the Epworth High School students selected the most athletic boy and girl in the senior class. The selection documented are 1948, Sarah Newberry and Earl Heron, 1950, Tommy Sue Fisher and Charles Galloway, 1951, Louise Green and Mark Kimsey, 1953, Betty Hopkins and Doyce Loudermilk, and 1954, Kay Hood and Jim Phillips. Finally, it should be noted that in the autumn of 1952, a group of boys at Epworth organized a football team. These boys did not compete against any other sanctioned high school teams and reportedly played only 1 game. Junior Mason, a member of the team, remembers playing a team from Ellijay. When Epworth High School students departed school after their last classes in June 1955, a more than 50-year history of education and athletics at Epworth came to an end. A new chapter began a few months later when returning students began a new chapter at West Fannin High School a few miles south of Epworth on Highway 5.